What's up, Simonics, and welcome back to a new quick win. Today we're gonna talk about more Angular things than Ionic actually, because we're diving into how to handle redirects and the login state with authentication guards so users arrive on the right pages inside your Ionic Angular application even if they have to sign in before they can actually see the content. So we're gonna create a custom guard and a bit of additional logic for this tutorial. If you didn't know, these quick wins are powered by the Ionic Academy, my online school to help you with everything Ionic. And if you want to check out the full code of this tutorial, the link is below the video for all members of the Academy. If you're not yet a member, check it out. 50 plus courses, a huge community, everything to get you started and keep you powered up with Ionic. So now let's dive into the content. Okay, so let's get started with a blank new Ionic application, and I've created 2 additional pages for my application so we can have different ways of testing our functionality. The most important part is actually the guard that we're going to create, so generated using the Ionic or underneath the Angular CLI, and you can already pass implements can load to the guard, which will automatically implement that interface for our guard. So let's quickly check out our app routing. By default, those routes are created. We will actually change this a tiny bit so we can make sure that it also works for dynamic pages or other different paths. We're gonna keep profile like it is, and of course we're gonna add our can load guard. So simply add can load and our auth guard to both of the pages that we want to protect. You usually have this when you have any kind of authentication within your application, that you protect the routes. Doesn't matter really in which place it is. Okay, once we got that, we could continue with our pages, or we actually start with the guard so we really understand what is going on. Now, this was automatically generated, so for now I will just get rid of everything. We can add this in the end anyway. Can load simply defines now if we're allowed to access that page or not. We use can activate in the past. Can load is actually a bit better if you want to make sure that not even the lazy loaded module is loaded. So that's why can load. Can activate is more like can this route be activated, and can load is can this module be loaded. We will also need a constructor, and we're going to keep it empty for now. What we're going to do is, for this tutorial, we expect some kind of authentication. We will just use is authenticated, and we're going to use a value from the local storage because that makes it easy for us to test this functionality. Once we log in, we will save something under the authenticated key. We will store 1 if we're authenticated and a 0 if we're not authenticated, so on logout. Since we want to have a boolean, we need to convert our string into a number and then we can also apply this to the number to check if it's true or false. So in case the string is 1, it will be the number 1 and evaluate to true. If it is 0, it will be a 0 number and evaluate to false. So that is our whole authentication logic in this tutorial. I know, it's don't use this in production. just for now. Of course, if we're authenticated, we just return true and all the the navigation in our application will work fine. The problem is this case. Usually we have something like this. We return false, we inject the router, so private router, and then we call this dot router, navigate by URL, and we bring back the user to the login. The problem is, let's say we're now navigating to /news/42. In that case, we're not authenticated perhaps. We are brought back to the login, we press login, and we're in whatever inside area that you defined that opens up after the login. And of course, we would like to save this information, and there are multiple ways to handle this. And the best one that I found online in different GitHub issues was actually this one. So we're gonna grab the current navigation from the router. So this.router get current navigation. And from the current navigation, we can get the URL. We will set this by default to the blank page, or by default, you could perhaps set it to the first internal page in your application. If the navigation is set, which is hopefully at this place the case, we're gonna set our URL to navigation extracted URL to string. Let's print out the whole navigation. So navigation to see what's actually going on. And then we will also change this line a tiny bit. Can we keep it like this? I think we can. But what we want to do is we want to now also append the URL that we got at this point. So got URL. We want to append this to our query params. So we're going to do query params and define whatever value. Let's just call it return to URL. So that is the first step in our application. Now that we've secured our application, let's check it out. Looks like we're currently actually authenticated, because I might have used this before. Can I see everything, please? Authenticated is 1. Let's delete this one, and then we're gonna give it another try. This time it should work better. So once again, trying this URL, we should now be sent back to the login. Actually, home is our login, and we see this is the navigation object. And if we check out the extracted URL, actually, where's the extracted URL? Yeah, it's hard to see that. If we print it out with this functionality, we get the URL news42. And what was important for me is this would actually also work if you add query params now. Come on, why are you not making this bigger, Sam? If we have something like this, news42 and then query params. In that case, we would now have access to that string, and that would be attached as query params to our redirect. In fact, I think it's not really working with navigate by URL. Let's try navigate instead, because right now I don't see the params in here. So let's use this one instead. Let's do it once again with news. And then we see we're on home or on a login page, and we got this information, and that is exactly what we need. Now we have stored the state that we cached inside of our guard, and we can use this in other places. So let's quickly head over to the home page to build a little flow for our application. We're gonna add a sign in to the home page. The sign in within our home page will be pretty easy as well. Did I change something right now? Let me quickly check this out. I felt like I changed the zoom. No, okay, we're good. Once we sign in, we will set the authenticated to 1, what I said, this super complicated authentication logic in this tutorial. And of course, we now also need to grab the query params, and therefore we're gonna inject both the router, because we're gonna do some routing in the sign in, and the activated route as well. I could also need an extension for this, which uses like a lowercase and then the regular name. A lot of things that I could create an extension for. Perhaps I should get into Visual Studio Code extensions. Maybe one day. Now we're gonna keep a login URL in here. We're gonna set this to an empty string. And right here in our init, we're gonna use the activated route snapshot query paramap get. So usually we use the just the paramap, which is like the 42 in the string we had before. But if we use the query paramet, we get exactly that information after the question mark. And from that, we want to get the return to now. right? Yeah, it was return to. In case return to isn't set, meaning a user just arrived regularly on your login page, you should also define the fallback. In our case, fallback will be sending the user to the profile. This should be the default page you usually show the user after a login. So now let's add a log. I could really, no, there must be something like marking this and then pressing some kind of key to log it out. Yeah, I need that extension. With that information stored in the homepage, we can now easily, after a login, call the router, call navigate by URL, and use our login URL. That's actually the most of the magic. Just to make sure that everything works, we can quickly also head over to the news page. I want to extract both the ID and the query value from the URL. Once again, no, I'm gonna copy this. This time I'm really too lazy. I'm gonna copy this. I'm gonna use add. Oh no, I wanted to hit add all missing imports. No, one click, one additional click. No, and then the wrong copy. Oh God, I completely missed today. Okay, just trying to get the ID from the paramap and the search what we had before for testing. So I had like news 42 search query Ionic. That's what we're gonna grab here, and then we can print it out as well. Quickly adding a logout so we can try a bit around inside the application, setting the authenticated state back to 0 in the local storage. That was like really the easiest authentication I ever implemented. And then we're just gonna display the information on the news page and a button to log out. So let's take a look how this looks. Let's actually try with the empty page. We can sign in, we're brought to the profile. That's great. Once we're signed in, we should also be able to get to the news page, arrived on news, no query. I can now also use search Angular, and it will print the Angular value. Great. So we can refresh, we're authenticated. Now let's copy this and let's log out, and let's try and use that string once again. That means perhaps someone from your application shared an internal URL. It is usually behind authentication. Perhaps it's a tool in the browser, perhaps it's an application with deep links, doesn't really matter. We see we got the return to right in here. And if we now press sign in, we're not brought back to the profile, which is the default, but we're brought exactly to the page that we initially wanted to open. And I think this is really a very important addition, something I haven't used in the past because the authentication guard was just there to protect the pages and bring the user to the inside area. But if there's the possibility that users share your information, like you have news or you have documents or anything behind a login, then you should definitely take care of adding this guard, making sure you store the current state or the current navigation URL in the query params and use that where inside your login URL or the pages where people can log in, so you can bring people directly back to the actual page that they wanted to access in the first place. Alright, that's it for today's quick win. I hope you enjoyed this kind of small deep dive into one specific feature of Angular. I think it's really important if you have any kind of application that uses content sharing, or it might be possible in your applications or deployed as a website. And in that case, make sure you got this small little detail implemented correctly. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, check out the Ionic Academy. Once again, my online school to help you with everything Ionic, and I will catch you inside the next video. So have a great week and happy coding, Simon.